Welcome to our latest edition of Spotlight at Northern. I'm John Schaff. He's Ken Blanchard. We're still political science professors at Northern State University. And joining us today is the young and semi-exciting Greg DePies. Greg is the director of the Confucius Institute here at NSU. And he's brought props. We have posters. In fact, right behind you is, what can you tell us about this, Greg, this picture? Apparently it was taken in China.
That's right.
By you guys.
This is one of our brand new pop-up banners that was taken. The photo was taken by Justin Frazee, actually. I have to give him great credit for this photo. It is a nice, cute lion from the springs in Jinan City, and we took it in May when we were traveling there with our educator delegation.
Right. Of which Professor Blanchard was posed as an educator to be part of that educator delegation.
Unfortunately, because of the language difference, nobody knew the difference.
Yes, so I'm sure we will get to that. But maybe briefly, Greg, I introduced you as director of the Confucius Institute. Maybe we should explain what the heck that is.
Yeah.
What's the Confucius Institute?
So the Confucius Institute is so many things, but most importantly, it is the Chinese language program for Northern State University, for the town of Aberdeen, and for the state of South Dakota. So we have classes for credit here, face-to-face and online at NSU. We have a teacher that is teaching out at Central High School right now. We also have community classes that we teach here and at the Senior Center. And like I mentioned, our classes are online, and so they are available to high school students around the state via the dual credit program, as well as South Dakota. Any students within the Board of Regents system can take our classes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that is our primary mission.
Is it all language, or are there other kinds of classes being taught through the institute?
Yeah, so we have language classes as our primary mission, and then we also have culture classes. So we have art and music classes. For example, every Tuesday here at the Student Center at 1 o'clock we have painting lessons that we offer for free that anyone is welcome to come and join in. They're a lot of fun. We do ad hoc presentations by invitation out in the community. So we've been out to the Yapatorium, for example, and worked with the kids out there. We've been to the Primrose Retirement Community and done a presentation on tea. And so we really have a wide variety of ways that people in the community, students here in NSU, can get involved.
And so, and where would you've got a website, no doubt.
That's right. Okay.
And if people want to find out about like if future programming or future community events, or if they wanted to register for courses, I'm especially thinking of community people who might want to pick up an online course or something like that. They don't want to come kind of butt and seat doing a traditional thing, but want to pick up something here and there.
Yeah.
How would they do that?
We have our website that's part of the NSU formal website, system of websites.
Gotcha.
We also do a lot of work on Facebook, so I would really encourage everyone who's interested in learning more to follow us on Facebook. It is Confucius Northern State U is the name of the Facebook page.
So if you just search that on Facebook, you would no doubt find it.
Yeah, Confucius Northern State U.
You'd find it. So go ahead and do that.
You said, are you the only Confucius Institute in South Dakota? Or?
That is correct. Yeah, we are the only ones. And I'd like to say that if it weren't for us, there would be no opportunities to learn Chinese. I mean, we were really the first ones to begin the process of offering Chinese classes first here at NSU and then in the public school system.
What's the, obviously some people might wonder why it's important to be teaching Chinese to our students. Can you offer a defense of that?
Yeah, certainly. I think that no matter what your field is, whether it's political science, whether you're interested in art, whether you're interested in music, history, obviously business and economics, science and technology, China is a super relevant place in the world today. And learning the language is really the first step to gaining a deeper understanding of what's going on in China and being able to engage with all of the new and interesting things that there are to learn in China in just about every field, whether in cooking, drinks, whatever it is that you're
Do you have business students who are interested in this for business reasons?
Absolutely. Business students are a large percentage of the students that take our Chinese classes for sure.
Being able to make that connection.
Yeah.
And so, because your background is in Japan.
That's right.
Real close. All right.
That's right. Don't confuse them.
Yes, real close, not the same. So how do you make those work? Because you do Japanese history, and you remind me what era of Japanese history is really
Yeah. So
your
originally,
specialty?
my degree, my PhD is in modern Japanese history. 20th century imperial era Japan is the area of focus that I had for my dissertation. But I also have a wider background in East Asia generally.
Yeah, so how does that work? Have you found that to be good preparatory training for heading up you have to hop across a sea to get over to China, but have you found that to be good preparation?
Well, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, my Chinese language is not up to the snuff in terms of doing this job, but my understanding of the history in general, and the overall situation in East Asia,
Do I dare ask if you're working on Chinese?
Piece by piece, don't test me right now.
Yes, I won't. I won't. I won't put you on the spot. Like, how do you say rutabaga in Chinese?
No.
So you guys both went to China this past summer. I don't know, you guys have at it. So tell us what that was about, and if you want to, you can tell about your experience. Can talk about his experience.
Yeah, so we have a couple of programs where students and faculty and administrators can travel to China. For the faculty and administrators, obviously, the program is really twofold. It's most importantly an opportunity for faculty to build connections with their corresponding faculty in at our partner university. So the Confucius Institute is a partnership between Northern State University and the University of Jinan. And so our professors can get to meet their students, get to meet their faculty on their side, build opportunities for research collaboration, teaching collaboration, and so forth. And then the other goal, of course, of the program is for faculty and administrators to go over and see what it is like at a Chinese university and be able to better convey the relevance and the positive aspects of study abroad to our students, to really give them a well-informed opinion as to what our students could possibly learn while traveling in China.
So rubber hits the road. When you guys were over in China this summer, what did you literally do? What kinds of stuff were you guys doing?
Yeah, I was speaking as the guinea pig and not the director. It was a fantastic trip, and I'm very grateful to the Confucius Institute and to all the people on the Chinese side and on this side who provided for that trip. It's good. I urge my students to travel abroad if they can, because it really is an experience that it's just hard to get that kind of appreciation for the world other than by going to a very different country. And China is a very different country. I mean, having been to Europe several times, Mexico, Canada, traveling to China is an entirely different kettle of fish. And so that alone, I think, for the faculty was worth it. But we went to, as Greg said, we went to Jinan University, met the president and several ranking officials at the university, got a tour of the university. We met with people what was the Hanban was where we went, which, if I recall, was part of their education ministry.
That's right, the Confucius Institute headquarters, right?
It is the Confucius Institute headquarters, and so we got to talk to people at the institute there. We visited a middle school and watched a lesson in English, which was about perfect since we could understand at least some of what they were saying, but also get some view of what a Chinese middle school course was like. We did get to see some cultural artifacts, Confucius' birthplace and deathplace, his grave, the Great Wall of China, the Imperial Forbidden City, and those things were well, incomparable to be able to see. And
is that Is that where terracotta warriors are, right? Or in the Forbidden City, or have they moved
No,
them?
no, that's Xi'an. So
Xi'an.
that's the first emperor.
Okay, so what's am I just way off?
Yeah, like
okay,
about,
all right.
you know,
That's why you're here.
many hundreds of miles
Okay, gotcha. All
apart,
right.
different
I've
city.
exposed my ignorance on film.
Yeah. No, the Forbidden City is the one, it's on one side of Tiananmen Square.
Okay.
And you walk, it's called the Forbidden City because it was really hard to get. There's various gates, and as I understand it, really hard back during the Emperor days to get through these gates because there was a whole bureaucracies designed to stop you. And so to really get to see the Emperor, you had to clear a lot of hurdles. So as you tour it, you go through each of these. And the gates all have these little small walls down at the bottom, about a foot high, that I understand were ghost traps. According to the story, the ghosts have to keep their feet in contact with the ground, so they can't step over one of these things. So, and in our hotel room, just in front of the hall, going down the hall to where our rooms were, we had our own little hotel-sized ghost trap, which was only about 1.5 inches high, but then we weren't imperial or anything. So,
yes. But you didn't trip on it, did you?
every time.
Were you okay? So were you?
I was
able
able to cross, so
yes,
I think that's a good
You
sign.
weren't trapped.
but I did actually trip on that thing almost every time I went down the hall. What the heck is this? And then finally someone explained it to me.
Yeah, there's this medium level of ghost trap that is just impossible for a person to notice. You know, like if it's high enough, then you'll say, oh, obviously it's there, so you step over it. But if it's too small,
if it's too
it can
small,
be a problem.
You tend to kind of trip over it. So we spent some time in Beijing and some time in Jinan City, and got to see a little of the city as well. I will say that we ate Chinese food. There are a lot of Chinese restaurants in China, it turns out.
I hear it's one of their top cuisines.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to throw a tennis ball out the bus window without hitting one. But I love Chinese food,
So I'm curious, is Chinese food in China different from the Chinese food that you get? I'm going to say at a good Chinese restaurant in the United States. Forget, I think we all know what bad Chinese is. I'm not talking about Panda Express. I'm talking about a real Chinese restaurant.
I'm interested in Greg's take on this. Do you think it's comparable to good Chinese food in America?
I think Chinese food in America tends to be influenced a lot from southern Chinese food, and we're traveling in northern China, and so it's really different.
Okay, what's a handful of staple cuisines, or maybe one or two staple cuisines? Is there something that is foundational?
You know, I think
things.
if there's one thing if there's one common food, it would be dumplings. You can often get dumplings here in the United States, and that is a big, important staple food in North China. So North China is wheat growers, and Southern China is rice growers. So there's a lot of noodles. North China also has a lot of, well, especially in the area we were at, Jinan is part of Shandong province, which is a kind of peninsula, and so seafood is a big deal.
Okay.
There.
Like what kinds of seafood?
Oh, I've had some very interesting ones.
I was going to say, tell me the funkiest thing you've eaten.
I've had these mini octopus things that were
they
very
alive?
Interesting. No, they were not alive.
Okay.
They were well cooked.
Yep.
Mini octopus was about the most interesting thing
Our
that I
colleague,
tried.
Professor Diaz, tells the story of eating a live octopus in Korea. He was in Korea and feeling it as it went down.
That's lovely.
Yes. I would not want to do this.
There was a spectrum of adventurous eaters, from very unadventurous to, I tried everything. I think the strangest.
You only live once, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're pretty sure it won't permanently injure you, you might as well try it. I think the strangest thing I ate in the entire trip was when we were on the high-speed train. And the high-speed train, by the way, is a fantastic experience. I mean, you really can't believe how fast you're going. If an ordinary train, you're watching things come by like this, on the high-speed train, they're going. And I mean,
how fast are you going, do you think?
Over 300 miles an hour.
Oof.
Yeah.
Are those magnetic, right? Is that the whole point? Is it's floating? Is that how they work?
It's on regular
It's on rails.
Yeah, but it's electrical powered, so there's a line.
Gotcha.
And the rails have to be, economically, they make no sense. But if you want a demonstration project that really is impressive, it's hard to beat.
Like, I would think they're moving so many people in China that a train like that would be very cost effective. Or like in the United States, where it'd be less cost effective because we're too dispersed. No?
They certainly don't have a problem with ridership. I mean, every time
Yeah.
I've ridden on that thing, it's been packed.
I think China has the only one of the. I think the last time I looked at this topic, there were 2 of these lines that actually made money in any real sense. One of them was in China, between Beijing and somewhere else, and it might have been that one. I don't know, but the other. I think it's in Japan, but I'm not sure.
If it was a Japanese
But it's
train.
they're fairly short stretches. The problem with them is no matter how many people you have on them, they're incredibly expensive. So either you have to heavily subsidize them, or you charge so much that people can't afford to ride them, or both. But that aside, what got me off on the train was they gave us a little box of goodies, and one of the goodies was a duck neck.
Mm-hmm.
So you open this little package, you pop this, it's meat, it's got, and then you chew it.
There's bone in it?
You're supposed to, the idea is to chew it up completely and then spit out the bones.
Gotcha.
That was strange, and several members of our party thought that they shouldn't let their kids play with my kids if I would eat something like that.
As a kid, eating chicken neck was very common.
Yeah.
Here you could say, well, giblets, right? That's a thing, and that's all. It's all it is. I mean, the difference between a duck and a chicken is not. It's not light years. As I understand, let's see if I can get this one right. I believe they're both birds.
Peking duck we also had, which is a fairly famous Chinese dish. It's very flavorful meat. I found the smell of the restaurant was a little off-putting, but the meal itself was quite good. We had a lot of stir fry, more spicy stuff than I expected, given it was northern China, and I heard that we had more of that than I thought. Probably the most interesting thing was these hot pots where you have a range of uncooked meat and you're supposed to lift it up with your chopsticks. That was another adventure. Mm-hmm. Put it into the boiling broth, then take it out when it's cooked. And it cooks very quickly, and then you eat it.
So it's a weird kind of fondue.
It's
so instead of oil, it's a burning broth. It's a boiling broth.
Boiling broth, and you cook it that way. We ate. Actually, that cuisine, one of the restaurants we all went to had these common hot pots. Mm-hmm. We also ate at several of us ate at basically a fast food place in one of the malls in Jinan City that had a hot pot restaurant. And there you had your own individual pot. And
gotcha.
That was really cool.
Professor Blanchard was a very good sport about all the different kinds of food. I don't think I remember him saying no once to anything that was put in front of his
That's been his reputation his whole life.
Yes.
He's not the kind of guy to say no.
Yeah, not to food, and I do like Chinese cuisine, and I thought that for the most part it was pretty similar to a good Chinese restaurant. We didn't eat anything that I didn't think was top quality. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a bad meal. Even the like I said, the fast food sort of joint in the mall was quite good. Had
you been to China before, Greg?
Yes. So I've been a number of times since taking over as the director.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. Well, of course, yeah. Okay. But even before, have you guys? Obviously, you've traveled to Japan extensively,
right? I mean, I did a year.
Remember, your wife is Japanese.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did a year in Japan on my dissertation research. I had been to China back in 2002 in my previous life, in business actually. But it never ceases to amaze me every time I go there how much has changed, even in the 16 years since I was there in 2002.
In what ways? That's interesting.
The cars, the number of cars, and the infrastructure, the trains. The number of buildings, the activity. It's been a very transformative 20 years in China, I would say.
Are you seeing, to the extent that you can just notice it by traveling without any deep investigation, I would assume that what you're seeing is the middle class is expanding. Is that accurate? Because as I understand it, the things I've read, the car culture is arising because there are enough people to buy, and there are car clubs. In fact, as I recall, one of our former university read, Ted Conover, the name of his book, it's now escaped me. It was one of our first common read books, tells a story of going on this car club in China, and apparently they're a bit crazy in how they drive in China. They like speed, and a lot of accidents, and not so much interested in pedestrians. It's just kind of go.
Well, and traffic in China is something to always be sensitive about if you go. You know, I have witnessed myself personally, you know, several accidents happening, and so you can never be too careful whether or not they're car aficionados doing drifting or whatever out on the boulevard.
Is this because there's so many cars, because they're not used to it? There's a lot of cars and a lot of pedestrians, or
combination of everything. I think if you read the research on urban planning, they'll tell you that there's very little that the scientists involved with traffic control can do when you have so many vehicles and so many pedestrians and scooters and bicycles and mopeds, you know, in the same, sharing the same area.
I can testify to that. Our hotel, right out the front door of the hotel, I guess this is the hotel in Beijing, there were shops across the street, but almost all day long that street is just full of both people. There are people walking, there are people in these, one of the things I was impressed by, everywhere you look they have these little three-wheeled carts, and you can tell that it's the same basic chassis, but some of them are pedaled, some of them seem to be sort of walked more than anything else. Some of them are have not
like
only
a
have
foot scooter type thing. You mean?
Well, no, it's like a cart. You can you could put a little basket on the back and put produce in it and cycle it around. But then some of them have motors, and some of them are completely enclosed so that you get a little protection rain. And some of them are used as taxis. You could apparently, I guess, flag one of these things down and get a ride from one place to another. But they're all that same basic chassis. Somebody in China is turning out 1 million of these things constantly because they're obviously the basic structure is cheap. But you've got 4 of those on any street at any one time right in front of you. And you've got the cars. And everybody's trying to get somewhere fast. And it's a recipe for a difficult
rapidly industrializing society. And you're just in all kinds of changes happening, you know, demographically, in terms of transportation. Very exciting place to study.
Well, there were a lot of really expensive cars parked out front of our hotel, a lot of Bentleys.
And that's what, you know, to get back to the question about the middle class, you know, I think that if there's one thing that history has taught us, I don't think that China is any different in the sense that industrialization unleashes such massive productive capacities, but it also creates socioeconomic inequality. And so to the extent that there is a middle class growing in China, there certainly is. I'm not sure, though, if it isn't a side effect of the massive accumulation of wealth in a kind of financial and business elite who are driving these Bentleys and these Ferraris, and who are also causing property values to rise very rapidly. And so when I talk to a lot of young people in China, they tell me, oh, you know, their biggest concern is, are they going to be able to afford to buy a house? Are they going to be able to afford to pay rent on their apartment in the future, especially in these cities, especially cities like Beijing? Massive population movement of people coming into the cities looking for work, looking for places to live. And so it's a major challenge. Those people who do have occupancy rights or ownership of land or places to live can do very well because those property values are going up greatly, and they're able to afford a car, for example. Our first tour guide on our first educator delegation, he told us, oh yeah, I was able to buy a car precisely because the property value on my apartment that I owned went up so much, I was able to sell it, afford a car, afford a much improved lifestyle.
It's interesting.
One of the things I noticed, I don't think I've ever been anywhere where the extremes seem to be so extreme, from wealth, in which you can see gated houses and these high-rise luxury apartments that Greg was talking about. As you travel, both on the highways and in the train, you see these gigantic, like 18 10-story, 20-story apartment buildings. And they're going up all over the place, and they're building them as fast as they seem to be going up. At the same time, our driver tried to take a shortcut from, I guess this is when we went to see Confucius,
That's right.
back to Jinan City, and kind of got lost, which was great because we saw stuff that ordinarily the tourists probably wouldn't be shown. And one of these things is we're looking off of the side of a mountain road, and there what looked like an old factory building, and the original roof was completely gone. In one cubicle that had no roof at all, you could see pigs. And right next door to that, there was somebody had put tin across the roof, and a smokestack was actually belching out smoke. Somebody was living in that corner. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty broad difference between wealth and poverty, which is what he's talking about. And I think it's probably almost inevitable in a country that industrializes that rapidly. Someone on the tour told us there was no homeless, but you could see homeless. We were told there was no crime, but I noticed that there was an awful lot of barbed wire on the walls of buildings, or walls surrounding houses and apartment complexes. So,
is that private homes, private buildings?
I assume so. I couldn't be certain, but a lot of the security was not that surprising. A lot of these places, like on the edge of our hotel in Jinan City, there were apartment complexes, and one night I just walked along one of them, and every one of them has a little booth, and there's some guy with like 18 screens looking at security from security cameras all over the place. Now that might be just a way to give somebody a job. Mm-hmm. It's not. I didn't see any sign of the kind of thing that would really scare you. And I understand crime rates are very, very low, but still, that's a lot of security.
So there's been the Confucius Institute is in part, or is in total, funded by the Chinese government.
Yeah, that's right.
Accurate?
So, yeah,
okay.
there are two partners that are the primary partners involved in the Confucius Institute. It's NSU, mm-hmm. and it's the University of Jinan. And the operations of the Institute are supported through funding from the Confucius Institute headquarters, which is part of the Chinese Ministry of Education.
Okay. Because this part, something worth talking about is across this country, the United States, Confucius Institutes in some cases have become controversial because I guess the charge would be that because they're a wing of the Chinese government, that there's something nefarious about these institutions. There have been some accusations that they're propaganda institutes for the Chinese government. Some people say yes, some people say no. Some universities have gotten rid of their their Confucius Institutes, and there's been some national legislation about this, as I understand, attached to the latest defense authorization bill about making sure, putting requirements, I don't know if you can speak to this because my knowledge of this is superficial, that they threw an amendment on there that's basically, I don't know if they're asking, making sure you're documenting things to make sure that Confucius Institutes aren't a tool, or maybe you could speak to this instead, because I'm going to say something grossly inaccurate in a second. So
it's true that there has been controversy in at the national level about Confucius Institutes, and insofar as the question of propaganda, I think you can see that there are security concerns, counterintelligence concerns related to China that bureaus such as the FBI are charged with protecting us from, and where I think the dialogue or the discourse has gone wrong is in singling out Confucius Institutes as a particular threat. As far as I can see, there has not been any evidence presented so far by the FBI or any other intelligence agency to suggest that, in fact, Confucius Institutes are, a nest of spies. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, if you were to ask them directly, like any other FBI investigation, they will tell you, well, we can't release information about that because it would compromise our sources. But, at a certain point, you have to say, if there is an issue, you're going to see indictments You know, you're going to see actual law enforcement action taken against specific individuals, and so far there simply hasn't been anything like that.
I can say here at Northern State University, I will not speak to Confucius institutes everywhere else. Who knows what they've got going on? Precisely the sorts of programming that you're talking about is cultural, educational. I'm sure in some generic way it redounds to the Chinese government's benefit because we know more about it. I suppose that might create more friendly feelings, but I really feel like it's an opportunity for the people here to learn something cultural, language, all the things that you've talked about. In some cases, travel for the people associated here with the university. It gives you a chance to experience something you would never have a chance to experience. And I don't know if you guys, if you're in your travels in China, if you ever felt, I don't know, constrained, hemmed in, like, I don't know if there's a question you couldn't ask, or, I mean a place you couldn't go. There are always places you can't go, but I mean like something like, what's, I don't know if you ever like turned a jaundiced eye to something because it's something that seemed a little off.
Yeah, I think what you're suggesting is another element of the criticism, which is kind of violation of freedom of speech, right?
Yeah.
That the suggestion being that if you're receiving funding from the Chinese government, that you might feel some form of censorship or self-censorship even about what you can and cannot say about China. And I think what needs to be clarified is that the Chinese Ministry of Education is only one part of our funding.
Yeah.
So we also receive matching funding. Every Confucius Institute receives matching funding from either a state or another private source through fundraising or what have you. And so just because we are receiving funding from the Chinese government by no means makes us, beholden to them to follow their party policies or their ideology. We are by no means in any business of promoting agendas or politics. We are, precisely as you said, in the business of giving opportunities to our students who want to learn more, and there are plenty of students that want.
Yeah, I would back up everything Greg said. At no point did I see any political propaganda aimed at anybody on our trip or at anybody here at Northern, in my experience with the Confucius Institute. There's some propaganda, but it's the kind of propaganda that South Dakota does all the time. Come to South Dakota, it's a great state, and we play up all the good stuff. The Chinese are necessarily concerned to convince everybody of how powerful and rich they are and how fast they're growing. And that's almost every country in the world is going to do this to some extent. One of the places we visited was a center that was, what did they call them? Was the business place where they had all the business innovation.
Innovation Center or something?
Innovation Center, something like that. And we saw a really fascinating room full of things that had been invented by people working at this center. It encourages people to come there and work, develop new products. So you had some really extraordinarily well-designed pressure cookers and toasters and things like that. And it was clearly very intended to be a cheerleader for Chinese business. But that's the most benign kind of propaganda that I can think of.
Not dissimilar like when the governor has his entrepreneurial contest sort of thing, which is not an institute, but once a year.
Absolutely. Business fairs that would be sponsored anywhere in the United States to promote business in those areas. So I didn't see anything the slightest bit concerning there. I mean, when you go to a country like China with the kind of government it has, if you're going to be meeting government officials, it's prudent to realize that you might want to be careful what you say sometimes. But nobody suggested there was anything I couldn't say or reacted poorly. I mean, there are things you notice about Chinese culture. As far as I can tell, the Chinese never, ever build anything that's too small for its purpose. Tiananmen Square, you could land several aircraft carriers on those big ones in the Avengers movies. You could land 15 of these things on that. We went to one of the museums, which has fascinating stuff in anthropology, biology, Chinese archaeology. But when you walk in, it's just ridiculously oversized. There's just no reason it needs to be that big. That's an interesting aspect of that culture, and I think the Innovation Institute had the same thing. It's a ridiculously large lobby.
So your invocation of the museum to collect something for you, how much English do you see when you're over in China? Signage,
Well,
this sort of thing.
And that is another big change that I've also noticed, and I think, especially in Beijing, it has to do with the fact that they hosted the Olympics in 2008. That they did make a deliberate effort to make a lot of the signage in English for the.
There's a Winter Olympics coming. I think it's to Beijing.
Yeah, that's right.
And,
yeah,
I don't know if it's in 4 years, whenever it is. I can't remember what year it is.
Yeah, so I have noticed that being a big shift also in the last 18 years.
And it's obviously the demand for good English translators is not meeting the supply, because many of the signs are unintentionally amusing, and that's this again happens in every culture. There are famous stories about American advertising campaigns that went really wrong in other countries. One of the most famous that I assume is true is that Pepsi's slogan, "Makes you feel young," or something like that, translated into Chinese, actually said, "Pepsi brings your ancestors back to life." I don't know if that's true. But
wow, that's a powerful potion.
That's
get Ponce de Leon on that one.
And people still prefer Coke.
But well, it depends on who your ancestors are. Maybe you don't want them to come back to life.
There was a campaign underway to get men to stand closer to urinals.
Yes.
And the key word was civilization. And they had different signs, different places you go, but it was one of the most amusing things when you had to go relieve yourself to see what this slogan would say.
Yes.
And one step forward, one step for civilization. That was pretty coherent.
Yep.
There was another sign that said civilization is a noble. Which, I like that one, okay. But I mean, those are the things.
Is a noble or ennoble?
Is a noble.
A space noble. Gotcha.
And then civilization is, the little adjective, nominative confusion there.
Yep.
But
you see that all over the world.
You do.
Too,
well, yeah, anywhere you go,
because
you don't have
it's too literal.
Yeah.
They translate things literally. I've got a friend who lives in Rome who has told me multiple times of things he sees in Rome and in Spain where he's lived, where they've translated something literally and it doesn't work in English.
And that's because it's hard to get enough translators for that kind of demand. But we did see, to answer your question, saw English signs almost everywhere that we went. There were McDonald's. There was a Kentucky Fried Chicken just around the corner from our hotel in Jinan City. It was a little hard to order there. We did go one night when we were all just ready for some more Americanized food.
And how was it?
It was good. It was Kentucky Fried Chicken. I didn't get what I thought I was ordering, but what I got was okay, so I didn't complain about it.
How did it compare to American KFC? I'm curious because I have an experience of this, so I'm curious.
I thought it was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I once got KFC maybe 2 hours outside of London, and it was not the same. And I was very upset. There was a time when I had a birthday thing where every birthday I would go get KFC because God help me, I love it so. And I happened to be outside of London on my birthday some years ago, and we got to go to KFC. It's what I do, and it is not the same. It's not as good.
When I was in Oxford in the late '80s, I noticed that a lot of McDonald's was the closest to being just like McDonald's back home. But even there were slight differences.
I just think I must say, maybe it's just because it was different, but it was not seasoned the same as it is over here. And I would think in China, getting, especially anything like at a McDonald's, getting beef or something like that, it would be, it might not be the same.
Probably the same. And of course, there are differences for taste. We went into one of the stores, supermarkets, and that was a lot of fun because a lot of rows have exactly the same thing that you would expect to see anywhere else. But then you've got the sort of fresh bins of food where there's one bin that's full of crickets. That was kind of fun.
What do you do with the cricket when you buy a cricket? Do you have any idea?
Fry, probably. Yeah, fry with some kind of seasoning.
Okay.
I suspect something.
Have you guys
like
ever
that.
done this? What's your insect experience?
I've eaten the fried cricket with seasoning.
Yeah, and what can you say?
It's all right. I didn't go back for seconds.
Yeah.
It's all right.
I'm going to guess crunchy.
Yeah, it's a good protein.
You've got some posters here. Is there anything you need to, you said that was there to remind you to say
right.
things, not necessarily to show them. But so we've got two. So I'm going to remind you that you have these reminders here. So
yeah, so I just want to remind everyone that we just got approval from the South Dakota Board of Regents to offer Chinese as a minor. So
excellent.
This is open to any student of any major. And it's a full 3 years of Chinese language classes.
Excellent.
And since it's so sequential, it's really behooves students to start early in their program, or else they may run out of time. If they start as a junior or senior, it may be difficult for them to complete the program. So if they're really interested in getting the Chinese minor, start as a freshman or sophomore, and you'll be able to complete the program. It's a lot of fun. I think it does open up a lot of opportunities for travel, for jobs, and whatever other interests you might have.
When we're teaching Chinese here, what dialect?
It's Mandarin.
It's
standard.
Mandarin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Standard Mandarin.
And is that the official dialect,
Yes.
so to speak?
Yes.
It might even literally be official.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There are many dialects in China, though, so
Yep.
you don't assume that just because you're fluent in Mandarin that you can go and be understood and understand in everywhere in China.
Some of
Gotcha.
some of the students that I met at Jinan University were chatting about this one day, about how they couldn't understand people who spoke Cantonese. So apparently it's quite broad. We
Do you have
did.
a sense on the breakdown of X percentage speak Mandarin, X number are Cantonese?
Yeah.
I've now exhausted every dialect of Chinese I know, so there's obviously others, but that's the only two I know.
Don't quote me on this, but I want to say maybe 80% Mandarin.
Okay.
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
I might be
Yep.
overestimating.
And then I would assume Cantonese is second, and then probably Smorgasbord, especially as you headed, can I get my directions, headed west.
Headed west,
Yeah.
and I mean, even in places like on the eastern seaboard there, between Beijing and Hong Kong, for example, I was in Xiamen last year, and apparently they have a very different dialect there as well. So
Yeah.
You do your best, right,
Yeah.
to make yourself understood.
I interrupted you. I don't know if you're say something important.
Oh, and you're just that one of the experiences there was with Courtney Wade Lindbergh and I gave a little talk to a room full of I think mostly political science students at Jinan University, and that was quite an experience. I was interested to see how well they can understand me, and judging by the questions at the end, some of them understood pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Did you do your Darwin thing? Is that what?
Yeah, I did okay. Biology and politics, just brief introduction. And I had made slides up, and I had a lot of visuals, so it helped. That obviously helped. It's really tough, I think, to go from Chinese to English or vice versa. They're just very different languages. If you start taking French, you're going to run into a lot of familiar words. Sure. But Chinese, if it doesn't have to do with food, you're probably not going to run into any. But still, the communication was pretty good, and it was. And everywhere we went, people were very nice, very polite, very, very willing to be friends. I liked China. I'd like to go back.
Greg, anything else that could be ordered? Is there anything we have not said about the Confucius Institute that you'd like our dozens of viewers to know?
Well, yeah, the only other thing would be that we are sending another group to China in the summer. So we will have a short-term study abroad program to the University of Jinan next summer. And this year we will have an NSU faculty member leading the student group, and it is Susan Landon Arnold, biology professor emeritus here at Northern State University, and the course that she will be teaching is medicine in China. So this class is obviously going to be of great interest to students in kind of pre-med type fields in biology and so forth. But her take on it is much more, as I understand it from talking with her, is it's much broader, and it should appeal also to students that are interested in just the practices of medicine, not just the biology of medicine or the theories of medicine, but the practice of medicine, so how it's actually institutionalized, or the business of medicine per se.
So even like a sociology of medicine,
So, yeah,
or
yeah.
there's a degree you can get, which is now lost in me, of health management, that sort of thing, healthcare management.
How healthcare happens in China.
Gotcha.
So
who can anybody do that, or
this
who
is
can,
open
who can sign
to
up to that?
all South Dakota Board of Regents school students, so NSU students in South Dakota, anywhere around the state.
Like even like if a community person wanted to pay tuition, could they do it, or is it more geared towards students who are currently enrolled and are full-time students?
Yeah, I think that if you worked through the Office of Continuing Education and online programs, they will figure out a way to get you enrolled in the class, and then you would be eligible for the program. There may be some administrative hoops to go through to make that happen, but
pretty sure that would be possible.
yes.
Yeah, so even if community people are interested in going on this trip, at least investigate, because I would think you probably could, because all it takes is money.
Yes.
Because you have to sign up for the course and travel.
That's right. But it's a very good deal. It's a 5-week program, and the University of Jinan provides a dorm room. They give you a stipend to cover your meals for the 5 weeks while you're there, and your travel to and from the airport will be provided by the University of Jinan. So basically, what you're on the hook for is the airfare. There's a cost involved in applying for a visa, but it's a really good deal, and the tuition, of course, for the course. If you want to get credit at NSU, you have to pay the NSU tuition.
Yes.
NSU doesn't give anything away
the hope
for free.
is that you're going to do this as a cohort, and so there's going to be a bunch of people doing this, and so.
And the 6 weeks in that kind of experience will give you some immersion in the culture. I mean, you will be eating a lot of Chinese food. You will be living and experiencing those kinds of things.
One thing I've heard from students over the years, because we do try to get students to travel abroad, and sometimes our students are a little bit nervous about it, and I think for understandable reasons. I get it, and one of the things that the students have liked is when we've done faculty-led trips. Many years ago, we've had Elizabeth Haller on this show many years ago, when talking about her London trips. Or the literary trips to all of the UK, I should say. And I know people have gone to Italy. The Blairs have gone to Italy on art trips, and some of the bio people have gone to Caribbean and Costa Rica. In fact, I think Susan was one of them. And I forget all the places faculty have gone, but it's a way for students to travel in a way that's more comfortable. It's not like your classic study abroad, where this happens sometimes, is you just go and you are the student in a different place at a university, and you're kind of on your own. Now, I think students should be open to that too, though I understand why that's intimidating for some people. But if you're interested in traveling abroad, and that whole I'm nervous about being in a foreign culture, and I haven't traveled a lot, and I don't know how to negotiate airports and this sort of thing, going as a group really is the way to go.
Absolutely, yeah. And what I tell everyone is that we've been doing this for 3 years now, and we have a lot of experience about the entire process of preparing the visa, preparing the travel itinerary, preparing, providing orientations for students and everything. We are going to back you up 100%, and there's a lot of confidence that you can have, and students' parents can have too. Often, more importantly.
Well, I've discussed this with some of my advisees. Is depending on generally study abroad is a little bit more expensive than just your regular semester's tuition. It's a little bit more because you got travel involved, these sorts of things. But I've often told them, depending on your situation, because debt is such a big deal for students these days. If you are in a decent debt situation, I really actually think that study abroad is one of the things that's worth going, even borrowing, getting that extra student loan. Like especially if you've got a good situation, you're not carrying a lot of debt out of Cruise Ship Northern. I really think it's worth it, because some things in life are worth the investment, and that's how important I think it is that people should be willing to do a little bit more in their student aid. Not obviously if you're going to break the bank, but maybe I can, tick that dial up to 9 or 10 on my student
No
loans for the
way you're going to
semester.
get 6 weeks no way you're going to get 6 weeks in China for this kind of price tag.
Yeah.
If you're not a student.
If you're not a
Yeah.
student, this
It's
is
the time
this
to
is
do
an
it.
extraordinarily good deal.
Yeah.
And with 6 weeks, you've got so much extra time. And Jinan City, again, the things that were nearby, the Confucius home, birthplace and tomb. When you go through Beijing, you can see the Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City. You go to the Great Wall, Mount Tai, which is one of the big, beautiful sacred mountain in nearby. Those are things that anybody can go and do while you're there, and those are just things that I did with the 9 days or so we were there. If you're there for 6 weeks, you've got a lot more time. But I again, to amplify what Greg just said, fortunately in the last several years, I've had some travel abroad. I also went to Australia last summer. Australia is a place where you can go and you're going to get around. You don't have to worry too much about it being different from any American city. It's very similar culture. China is another thing. If you got lost in the middle of China, didn't know anybody, trying to figure out where you were and where to go could be really tough. You guys took care of us at every stage of the game. We always knew what was going on. We were always, there was somebody there every moment to show us what bus to get on, what train to get on, what plane to get on, everything. That really is a valuable thing. So any student who could take advantage of this, don't miss it.
Excellent. Well, we probably should be wrapping things up here. Greg, thanks so much for coming. And people can always, and we've got this email address that people don't use, but it's there, so I'm going to announce it anyway, which is spotlight@northern.edu. So you could shoot an email, and even if you have questions about the Confucius Institute, we can always forward those along, or I think go back to the beginning of the show. Remember, you can go onto Facebook and look for Confucius NSU. What was it? I put you on the spot.
Confucius Northern State U. And you can also email me at confucius@northern.edu.
There you go. Even easier.
Even easier.
Even easier. I don't have to forward anything. So, Greg, thanks so much for being here. Professor Blanchard, as always. So that's it for this show. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time for Spotlight at Northern.